Welcome to Psychic Bent. My name is Carrie.
And I'm Kim. We are two sisters wanting to help other psychics learn and grow in their abilities and to help educate about spirits, angels, and everything psychic. All right, welcome back, listeners, to Psychic Bent. Today we're going to go ahead and surprise you. No. With an episode.
Surprise! We're here.
Yeah, surprise. On the episode concerning energy. And can we really move things with energy or feel things with energy? And whether or not it is possible to move things when you get angry or upset and those emotions are really high. So, Carrie, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think?
Well, a lot of this is theory, obviously, because you Google angry empath or angry psychic, you're not going to really get up with a lot of information that's documented. But, we had a listener that brought up the subject of when, as a psychic and empath, that when she gets angry and she's slow to anger, that when she gets a point that she actually had someone step back from her when she was angry, and it kind of drew her attention to, oh, did I do that? Because normally you don't step back unless someone's really lashing out at you, and she wasn't lashing out, but she just got that angry, And I think a lot of us take a lot to anger. Usually if you're meditating a lot and journaling, you're pretty much working a lot of your stuff out. So it takes a lot to get you angry. You're usually not an angry person, because meditation's calming and releasing, and you're a little more even keel, I believe. But when, like I mentioned on a previous episode, I had a situation where a former employee at the time just kept badgering, and I just had enough. And basically told her to sit down, and she sat down with such force and so started a look on her face that after it happened, it kind of made, because I knew I was psychic, but it kind of made me wonder, did I mentally push her? Kim and I, we were talking offline about the possibility of what happens when your energy changes. For example, if you are at a high vibration and your energy is way up there, what do you attract?
Well, you attract light, like vibrating people and things.
Right. So, and if your energy is really low, what are you attracting?
Well, that's when you attract the negative and the very low energy, low, oh, woe is me type of people and things.
Right. So we've talked about how when your vibration is low, it affects other people around you. When your vibration is high, it affects other people around you.
Yeah.
And then we've talked about protective bubbles. When you go out, when you're a very emotional empath, you want to have your little force field, your golden bubble around you to protect you. But what happens if someone's poking the bear, so to speak? You've got this bubble of energy that's surrounding you, and someone comes into that energy with negativity or yelling or whatever to try to anger you. I believe it's possible that you can flux your energy, maybe not realize you're doing it, but you don't want them in your space. You don't want them that close to you. You don't want that energy by you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's entirely possible that you could, in a moment of anguish or a moment of anger, push someone away from you or exert energy to push them away from you. So you're not physically touching them, but you're doing something, I think, that is getting the attention. Whether or not you're shooting a bunch of energy at them, does that just stop? You're not yelling it, but you're just like mentally going, psychically going, stop. And I think that energy, and that's my theory, is that energy is going to get propelled to that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could see that, where that would happen, because you feel everybody's energy anyway, every day.
Right.
Well, everything's
Right.
energy every day, and you are affected by that. So it would make sense that if you have building up energy, that people would feel that, especially if you were trying to just get somebody to stop and leave you alone, or to back off, or to quit whatever it is they're doing to try to make you mad, annoy you, whatever the case may be, get under your skin. And
Yeah,
I could see that.
And Yeah, and I'm not saying we're talking about Carrie the movie, type situations,
No.
but I mean, I don't know how many times growing up, Kim, what did you hear?
There's that look again. What's that look?
Don't give me your father's look.
Don't give me your father's look. Don't give me that look. Why are you giving me such an angry look? Yeah, a lot of times we did that. And, I think people were not only picking up on the look, I think we were pushing our feelings and frustrations out to them as well. And that's why they were impacted more by just a look.
Yeah, and that look was known to stop people cold. Kind of like, well,
Yes, it was.
and because I know when Dad used it, it was like, whoa, okay, oops, abort mission,
Yeah.
we go back,
Yep.
you know. But it's that energy that accompanied the look that really got your attention.
Yeah, I agree with that. I really do. Because I'm sure they were feeling what was actually coming at them.
Right. I mean, if you can, raise your vibration, if you can do different things, I don't see why you could not inadvertently flex your little spiritual muscle or your psychic muscle, and that bubble around you is going to go boing.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you think about it, I mean, if we and we discussed telekinesis before, and that's the ability to move things with your mind. Well, if you can move objects with your mind with concentration, what's to say that you can't do that in a moment of frustration or aggravation? Move something.
Right. Exactly. Because it's energy that you're moving around.
Right. And especially if you are not taking care of your psychic needs on a daily basis, if you're not meditating and not doing your psychic protection techniques, I think you're going to be more apt to probably do things that you're not realizing you're doing. Like we talked about before, you're probably getting psychic kicks that you're not even aware of. You might possibly be sending out psychic pushes or psychic warnings. You're aggravating me. Stop. Kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So with the bubble that you were discussing earlier, kind of have a belief that energy that you've got inside when someone is pushing your buttons or trying to make you angry or whatever it is that their intentions are, and it is really starting to affect you, that and you've got your bubble up to try to keep those things out, that I think that the energy inside of that bubble could actually build and build and build until the bubble breaks down, and then there's the rush of energy out to that person, and they feel it and react to it when you've sent it out.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that is something that could actually happen as well. I mean, I know everybody tries to keep their not guards up, but their vibrations up and everything. But there's just those people that push you so hard when you're trying to be mindful and everything, that I think that could happen, that they could just actually break your bubble down, and out goes the power, out goes the energy in a flood,
A gush.
yeah, yeah, like a big gush, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. When we're recording this, Mercury's just gone into retrograde. We're probably a few days into it right here when we're recording. And we have
Hmm.
experienced and we have witnessed all kinds of things that could, because this is a period where you have to be mindful of avoiding conflict because it's easy for miscommunication during this kind of period. And offline, we were discussing several situations where, well, that's kind of what's going on. But, you're in a period right now, Mercury in retrograde. People can get worked up over things that are just not really normally things you would get worked up on. You could easily get your energy all out of whack.
Right, yeah.
someone mistook something you said, and then they get argumentative and you're caught off guard because that's not what you said, you know. And you can see how something can quickly escalate into a situation where your energy is just going to like stop, stop, push, stop, especially if
Right.
it's an
Yeah.
individual who likes to argue,
Yeah.
which
Good point.
we all know someone who likes to argue. They could argue with the wall and still lose, but they'd still do it.
Yeah. Or somebody that just doesn't like you, because let's face it.
Right. And your energy is not going to resonate with everyone.
Exactly.
If they have a lower
Mm-hmm.
vibration and you have a high vibration, they're not going to like you. And they too can use their energy to push at you. And I mean, not that we're walking around trying to push everybody with our energy, but I think if it's a perfect storm, yeah, it's going to happen.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, if you're the type of person who avoids conflict at all costs and will do everything in their power to try to not have conflict, well, guess what? There comes a point where you have had enough. And
Yeah.
everybody, I mean, anybody's got that point where they just, I have had enough. And it's that how I have had enough is enough to push your energy back, your bubble back, and you're going to push.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're someone who has strong telekinesis capabilities and you're not aware of it because you've not practiced it, you haven't tried to develop those things, so you're not aware of it, you could be doing that when you're angry.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
And I think as spiritual people, we're not usually running around being angry all the time.
No, I think we try to avoid that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And the empath in us is definitely avoiding any and all conflict. So I think it's only right that when you're finally angry, you have had enough, and that's it. And I think that your energy level has been, I don't want to say cooped up, but it's been restraining, 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 and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm done. And you're like opening a floodgate.
Yeah.
And I just think that we need to be mindful that we're not, because it kind of scared me when that situation with the employee when she just sat down startled looking, and I'm like, she looked really startled at that, but like, oh, I hope I didn't do that, and I think I did. But it was just like she wouldn't stop, blah 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 blah. And normally I was very even tempered, and I think perhaps she thought that meant I was an easy target.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just kind of like you get to a point, you're like, no, 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 you misunderstand that I do have a breaking point, and you're not going to like it. But I've been very mindful since then to make sure I don't ever try to do that again, because that's just not nice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And talking about telekinesis, that leads us to two totally different categories that totally kind of go with the whole moving things sometimes you do in anger, or when you're not necessarily angry, but you're emotionally upset, which is a little different from anger, because anger could be just geared on you've made me so mad, where being emotionally upset is when you're a young girl, you got the hormones going on, you don't understand, you have psychic abilities, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff.
Right.
And so you can have an emotional roller coaster. And if you're not a grounded psychic, you could also have the same situation where you're at an emotional roller coaster, and no one knows when you're going to snap, because it's going to happen. Because you're not grounded, you may not understand you have abilities, you may not understand what's going on, especially like we talk about being raised in the Bible Belt, in a Christian-based faith, where things can't be explained, but they're still happening, and they're telling you they're not happening, and things like that. So, Kim, you want to take us on from there?
Okay, to expand on what Carrie was saying about telekinesis, it is also called psychokinesis. And this is the ability to change matter, energy, space, or time by using your mind. And there are different abilities that are tied to or included into the psychokinesis, telekinesis category, which is, like you said, moving objects, changing the shape of objects. that includes like melting or bending metal. I know you've probably seen in the past where people are trying to move a spoon, bend a spoon with their mind. That's part of it. They try to influence events. Healing can happen during psychokinesis. Teleportation, which is something we discussed in the previous episode, which I think is really, really fascinating. And there's other things that could be involved or be considered part of the telekinesis. Of course, lifting things up off the ground, mentally, the ability to control fire, water, air, and earth, and different things, including the vibration. Now, some of the things that researchers, and there are actual researchers called parapsychologists that try to document and study the paranormal psychical abilities that people have. So they've been doing this for years and years and years, studying people that have psychic powers or psychic abilities and clairvoyance and the different clairs and such, mind reading, stuff like that, see if they can do the different abilities that we have. So there is actual studies out there, and they attribute the psychokinesis and the other subject that we're going to be talking about, so I'm just going to throw them together, poltergeists, with a lot of times it is the young teenagers that are involved in these different things, these two different things. Now, I mentioned poltergeist.
Now,
And
can I interrupt you for a minute?
yeah.
What is psychokinesis also called? For those that maybe do paranormal investigations and such, what do they call it in the paranormal realm?
Oh, well, as far as the abbreviated is called PK. But
yeah, so if you hear of PK manifestation, that is psychokinesis.
Right. Along with telekinesis is also an interchangeable word with the psychokinesis, but they usually say PK. And then the other is a poltergeist.
Right. So and don't let Poltergeist scare you, because that was a scary movie. So was Carrie, but different thing.
Well, the original Carrie was scary. I can't say that about the second one, but that's another subject, so let's move on.
Well, this is another podcast topic, but try getting a date for prom when your name is Carrie. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. So poltergeist is actually called noisy ghosts. That's how it was originally called. I think it's German, which was for noisy ghost is poltergeist. So I thought that was really interesting. They've been in existence.
I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't?
Noisy ghost?
Noisy ghost.
I wasn't by the mic. I'm sorry. Noisy ghost. I like that.
Yeah.
You poltergeist, you. Yeah. See, now that definitely makes it less scary.
Right. Well, it does. And poltergeists and PKs, or psychokinesis, are dealing with the energy that's going on around. Now, the poltergeist, objects could be moved or being thrown around, unexplained noises, loud knocking. Even more dangerous things can form to be scary realm, could get violent, or depending on what's happening. This is all energy that's happening. And a PK and the poltergeist, it usually takes place when a particular individual is present, like a person in the household or the place where you're at, that this activity happens the most around. Okay? Usually it's a teenager that's in puberty and they have a lot of emotional problems. So the poltergeist...
Or a teenager with emotional problems?
Exactly.
Go figure.
Right.
If you've ever had a teenager growing up in your house, raise your hand. You know what she's talking about here.
Exactly.
I'd like to blame a lot of stuff on a poltergeist back then.
Yeah. Yeah, same.
Just saying.
So the poltergeist, it is often thought of as a negative spirit attracted to the teenagers, but that's not really I mean, some people believe that that's what it is, and that due to the hormone and emotional changes that they're going through in their body, that negative energy may be thrust outward, sometimes moving or destroying objects telekinetically. So that's where your telekinesis comes in.
I can see if you have, because I mean, not all, not all teenagers are angry, but when you're, I mean, if I growing up in today's kids compared to when we grew up, it's a totally different world. You know,
Hmm.
where bullying can happen online, it can happen on the school bus. I mean, you can't get away from it. You
Hmm.
know, if you're already I mean, if you're a psychic child, you're standing out already, and you don't understand you're a psychic child. You don't understand why you're standing out, and then you've got bullying going on, and then the disciplinary factors in schools have changed to almost none. I can see where, you know, that I'm surprised there's not more poltergeist and PK activity going on in the world. You know,
Hmm.
because it's almost like you can't even get away from it even when you go home.
Right.
You know, you're here you're trying to go to school every day, and you don't understand, and you see a ghost, you're seeing someone, or you're getting all these feelings and emotions that aren't yours, and you don't understand that, but you also have your own little crazy little emotions going on because your puberty's kicking in, and then you've got some anger involved because you don't understand anything. I mean, I can see why things might start getting thrown around the house.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, or make all the cabinet doors fly open because you're angry, you know, because isn't it, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but isn't it when they're in an emotional state that things happen?
Yes, it is when they're in an emotional state, when they're having an emotional outburst, or it's just built up so much inside of them that it's just,
So for so for some teenagers, it's every day, all day.
well, yeah, exactly, exactly.
That has got to be exhausting for
Hmm.
this particular. I mean, imagine you're an ungrounded psychic child, because I mean, even though you're at puberty, you're still a child
Right.
in many aspects, and having to deal with that, and then let's throw in things are starting to fly around the house.
Hmm.
Or you're getting angry and things are happening.
Right. Yep. So
Sorry, I
there's,
didn't mean to jump in like that.
no, that's all right. That's all right. So that just goes along with what I was going to be saying, that the stress and pressures of school, junior high, late grade school, whenever it is that these children are starting to go through their puberty, they are dealing with the peer pressure, pressure from teachers, pressure from family. They are being pressured for sexual relationships that they're not even ready for. They could have been involved in sexual abuse or emotional abuse, physical abuse. All these things could build up and cause this reaction or this problem in someone who is a psychic. Even sleep deprivation and everything, depression, low self esteem, just all of these things can build up. And with this building up of energy and not knowing how to deal with it, and also dealing with the psychic side of their abilities that they're seeing and experiencing. I mean, it's just a jumble of things that they cannot cope with, and that causes this negative energy to just start building and building and building. And that's when a poltergeist, or even the PK, or the psychokinesis things happen. So you've got things moving from the psychokinesis, moving about and throwing about and things, and levitating and whatever's happening there. And then the poltergeist is the energy that's causing things to actually spin and twirl and break and move, and it could potentially become a dangerous situation if it's not under control.
Absolutely. And I know from the paranormal investigation standpoint, you can actually create an entity
Hmm.
with PK manifestation. If you've got someone that's that out of control emotionally and angry all the time, that it's been documented cases with ghost hunting where they actually form an entity from the energy, and then that entity is kind of hard to get rid of at that point. Don't you agree?
Yes, because it is a non-human It has never been a living human entity or ghost. It is a energy that has been created and has never lived on this earth.
So we're talking about how prolonged issues with your abilities and causing constant chaos for some time, you're actually manifesting an entity that's now going to act out whenever you get upset. Am I correct in that?
That is my understanding. Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
I would.
And and we have seen that on Kindred Spirits and the other some of the other ghost hunting shows that we've watched, where they've had to, and especially on the Dead Files that's come about with Amy, where she's like, there's a psychic here that doesn't know they're a psychic, or there's a medium here that doesn't know they're a medium.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where, and it comes down to that person always knew they had some abilities, but they were embarrassed in the closet, didn't want to bring it up, were afraid what people thought. There's a whole fear factor that we've discussed before in previous episodes. And then all of a sudden, they've now created this entity that is now acting out anytime they get mad.
Right.
And you have no control over that now.
That's true. That is true. But they have
Is there
found
help?
there is help. I mean,
Yay!
the primary thing that anyone that has this happen to them is to get therapy. It is so important to get counseling for that person. That person has to be willing to get the counseling to work through whatever it is that they are experiencing. But
Now, Kim, is there a certain counselor that they should go to, being psychic and having this kind of situation? Because you don't want to go to someone they just write your prescription.
no,
Is it
that's
a parapsychologist that they should go to? Where should
well,
they go?
they could go to a parapsychologist, but I think just any family counselor, because not every psychologist should be prescribing you medication.
I mean, honestly, I'm a little concerned going to a psychiatrist or psychologist and saying, so I see ghosts, and so now I've created this entity and it's throwing things around the house. Don't you think that?
Well, that's why you have to do your research and decide and find who you could go to that has, well, spiritual beliefs.
So I was wondering I mean, they need to do the research. They just shouldn't just go to anybody. Because if they go to anybody, you're going to have the prescription writer or someone telling you that you need to be, evaluated further. I'm wondering where they could, I mean, like, because I know there's a lot of spiritual churches. I wonder if there's some sort of list in places like that on people who believe in the paranormal and believe in psychics and are also, because I know they're out there. I mean, we've seen them on shows that believe in the paranormal, and they're also psychiatrists or psychologists.
Yeah, I didn't get into checking where you could find these resources, but I'm sure that if you find someone that believes in the holistic aspects of the medical field and try to find a counselor that is involved in the paranormal way of thinking or the psychic way of thinking, I'm sure it's just a matter of just doing some research online.
And you really need to delve in and ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Not just go to any old anybody.
Right.
Because you gotta, it's just like finding a general practitioner. You need to find what fits for you.
Right.
Someone you can trust and things like that. And I just think that people need to understand that you do need to do some homework. Just don't go to the phone book. Well, no one has a phone book anymore. Don't just Google and see who pops up. You need to reach out to maybe the spiritual community. Reach out to, the spiritualistic churches and ask, hey, do you know of this is what's going on? Do you know someone who is a psychiatrist that could help, or a psychologist to help? I think you really need to be smart and ask those questions and not be afraid to ask those questions. Because I think a lot of people are afraid of, like, well, if I say this, then they're going to condemn me. They're going to, throw me in, putting me in a straitjacket and throw me away. I think there's that fear out there.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people need to understand, this is your life. You need to there's so much out there on the internet that is bad, but there's so much good out there too that you can research. If you can get a parapsychologist, that's even better because they're already, they go with the field. But if they don't, maybe a university that does study paranormal activity might be a good area that they can refer someone.
Right. That could be a really good source.
Yeah. So, I mean, just kind of, don't be afraid to ask questions if this is going on for you, because this is huge.
Yes.
And you don't have to live that way.
Right. And your child doesn't have to live that way.
Exactly. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you're pretty much, either enjoy psychic stuff or you're psychic. And you're evolving and you're growing. If you got a friend that says something about, something's going on at their house and they've got teenagers, you need to take a look at that. Well, the best thing is to do is walk through the house and make sure it's not an entity that's being mischievous.
Right.
But if it's a PK manifestation, that's a different kind of energy. If you're walking through a house, I mean, I've not encountered it, but I mean, thinking, when I walk through a house to do a blessing, and I run into entities that are in the house, and I've lived in haunted houses. Kim's lived in haunted houses. There's a certain feel to that entity.
Mm-hmm.
There's emotion. You
Right.
get an essence of who they were with their life. You just get all that. Well, something that's created, like a PK, is not going to feel that way. I mean, I've not encountered that, but it can't feel that way because this was made out of confusion, anger, lashing out. So there's no way it could feel the same.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It just can't. So I think that if you have a house that things are going on and things are happening and whatnot, I mean, but they don't feel like the same essence of someone that you've had before. I think a lot of people like to go down, there was a dark entity in that house, but maybe it's not a dark entity. Maybe it's someone's cry for help.
Exactly.
Be wrong, but it's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Because usually when these things happen, it's when the agent, the person that is involved in this with their emotions and such, it's when they're around. And a lot of times when they leave the house or they're going to school, anything that was happening in the house dies down. It goes quiet because it's only acting up when they're there.
Yeah, because it's tied to them.
It's their energy. It's their creating it. But then when they leave, and if this poltergeist has manifested into something different, then that could very well stay there and be there all the time. It just gets more powerful when that person comes back into the house.
So the PK manifestation or the poltergeist doesn't follow the person when they leave the house?
That is not what I've seen from what I could find, on
So, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing this out there. If I created a PK manifestation in this house and it's getting awful and we can't live here anymore and we sell the house and we all move, it won't come with me?
But the poltergeist activity could continue with that person.
Okay, so they could create another one.
Correct.
So they're outrunning something they can't outrun until they get help.
Right.
This is a really interesting topic, Kim. And I know that we don't like to go down things that are really, really scary. And I don't find this scary. I find it fascinating. So I hope the listeners find it fascinating. Because, if you're noticing things like this going on, this is a great opportunity to well, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on in my house? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know what the percentage is on how many psychics that are ungrounded and don't know their mediums or whatnot create these kind of entities. It's just really fascinating.
Yeah, they don't have research or definite numbers on anything like that because I did do the left brain. Yeah, how can you measure? How do
you measure that?
Exactly.
I'm sorry, everybody in this room, if you've ever created and manifested an entity, raise your hand. Ain't nobody gonna raise their hand. It's like, oh no, that's not me. Not me.
Yeah.
And that's, but it's the same way in your home though. If things are going on, no one's gonna look to you. I think it's Junior. I think Junior's the one doing this. No, because they're all freaked out by what's going on, that no one's really realizing that someone in the house might be the one creating these issues.
And not intentionally.
Of
Keep that
course
in
not,
mind. That's
because
not intentionally.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just they're trying to deal with so many emotions, feelings, thoughts, and then if you let's sprinkle some psychic abilities and some empathness in there, and good luck, thumbs
Yeah.
up, hey,
Yeah.
hope you make it. So I mean, if you're a parent that you, I mean, if you're a parent and you're listening to this podcast or other podcasts and you're like, oh, I think I got abilities. Okay, you need to look down at your children
Mm-hmm.
and do, because you know what? Everybody has them. We all have abilities. But if you have abilities that are pretty strong, then you might have been one of the ones born wide open. Well, guess what? That apple did not fall far from that tree. So you need to take a look at your children. I mean, my niece is a psychic child.
Mm-hmm.
She was a psychic child. You understood she was a psychic child because she was having conversations with all sorts of people.
Yes, she was.
So she was born wide open.
Yep.
And of course, children do accept things more readily, because they're young, they're children, they haven't been, no rose-colored glasses yet. But when you get to that tormental preteen, teen time, and you don't know you're psychic, the family doesn't talk about it, or they weren't born wide open, but you were.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if you're into psychic development and you have children, you need to take a good look at your children and see, are they exhibiting psychic abilities? And you should be having a dialogue with them anyway, because if you're psychic, things are going to be happening around you that they need to be understand. Mommy, why is there a ghost in the house talking to you? Well, honey, because I'm psychic and that happens, and this is what this means, and educating them.
Right.
Because if they're saying the ghost is talking to you, guess what, sister? Psychic child. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like what we're trying to talk about today is to kind of not abuse the fact that I got angry and I physically push someone with, well, not physically push them, but I push someone with my mind, or I sent some energy to them that made them step back, or I'm throwing cabinets open because of a poltergeist activity. These are things that need to be identified and that can be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And they can be averted, especially, I mean, like the listener that brought this topic to our attention also has 2 children. One of them is autistic, and both of them are showing abilities. But the autistic one shows it differently. But since she's been listening to the podcast and working on her abilities, she's been able to help him understand his emotions better, because raising an autistic child is not easy, and she's learned how to communicate with them and what stimulates, what doesn't. And now she's able to also say, hey, by the way, it's okay if you see this. And so you have to understand to kind of avoid the PK situation and avoid a poltergeist situation, that if you have abilities, your children more than likely do too.
That's true. And it
And I
doesn't,
know I went on a little.
no, that's fine. But just remember that counseling and therapy definitely helps with children understanding their emotions, because that's what they're needing to
Yeah,
deal with, is their emotions, their feelings about what it is that's going on in their lives, not necessarily
the psychic part
the
of it.
psychic part. This is
I
just
get you.
being the
Yeah,
kid and going through what they're going through in everyday life.
I thought you were going to tell them, you just go on and tell all about all the stuff going on. Like, you go tell them everything you see every day. Go on, go tell them. Like, no. Find the right one for that. But no, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I am I've gone to counseling. Counseling is wonderful. You get the right counselor, and it's very, I don't want to say liberating, because what you put into counseling is what you get out of counseling.
And it really depends on what that counseling's for. It could
Right.
help you just
You know,
let go of the past and move forward and stop looking
right,
back at the past, or it could be bringing you back up in the world, because
right.
it
There's
just
different
depends on,
things.
right. exactly.
Right. There's different things for different situations,
Mm-hmm.
different traumas or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you have a young person in your household and everything is very traumatic, you may need a counselor just to help for they can learn coping skills.
Correct. Correct.
You know, now if they're exhibiting a lot of paranormal stuff, then you're going to need to get a different counselor for that.
Right. Yeah. One that can help with
So
that too. Just help them
yeah,
understand what it is that they are feeling and dealing with
yeah,
as
and
far as the psychic
and
side too. Hmm.
and I think that the majority of your PK manifestations and your poltergeist manifestations are basically in households that psychic stuff's not talked about.
Well, that's true. And this isn't just the children that are affected by this. I mean, there are adults too that have created the poltergeists and the PKs because of the different emotions that they deal with on a regular basis and not knowing that they are psychics or
Yes, and
psychic
yeah,
mediums
our
or
mediums.
or
Yeah,
anything like that, so I'm just not. And I really think that maybe people that have addictions and such, that they could also create these as well if they are psychics and don't know it, because altering their mind and such. So
right.
I think that that could really build up some energy in there as well.
If you think about it, if you start adding, stimulants and you're not grounded, you're pouring a little gasoline on that fire.
Mm-hmm.
If you're already unstable or possibly having PK manifestation,
Right. Exactly.
then you're going to be creating more issue. Plus, you could be drawing more negative entities into the living space only because of you've lowered your vibration because you don't know you need to have a higher vibration.
Right.
So every time you get angry and you're lashing out, now you got your little PK manifest beast getting larger. And now you've got some, other entities that are going, oh, let's go check out what's going on over here.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's you become an episode of Ghost Hunters. But anyway, you have to be very careful
Right.
to avoid, like you were saying, certain things. If you have an addiction, then you're going to have entities that are going to want to keep you
Mm-hmm.
in that realm because it serves their best interest, of course not yours. And then of course you're going to be drawing things into your home.
Right. Now, there was one thing that I found very interesting in some of the early researches of the psychokinesis and the poltergeists. And they found that some people that were having these experiences were also having epileptic seizures.
Really?
Yes.
I had never heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I found it very interesting that they were actually having little seizures or little epileptic moments. And it's really interesting when I read this, because I was like, oh wow, that is so interesting, because I know someone. She's an adult now, but she was, when we were, well, around her, she was younger. She was a child, and we used to camp at a campground, and she was there. And when she would have epileptic seizures, or seizures tied to her cerebral palsy that she has. And there would always be a man that would appear in a dark hat, dark coat, and a briefcase. And that's how they knew that she was getting ready to start her seizures. And around
So the whole
her,
family would see him?
she would see him, but she would
Oh,
tell
she
them
would see him. Okay.
she was seeing him. And then when she was going through the seizures, sometimes things would get moved in the house and they weren't certain how it was happening, because they were all in panic mode because she was having another seizure.
Well, yeah.
So, but
I'd be
things,
in panic mode too.
right, right.
Ah, ah, ah. What do I do?
Which
Chicken Little.
that's all valid, that because, some of her seizures were pretty serious, and they didn't know if she was going to come out of them whenever it would happen.
That's right.
sometimes. But it was when I read this study, I was like, oh my gosh, that's probably what was happening with her. That she
Now, I
was,
wonder who that man with the briefcase was.
I know.
Because, in a PK manifestation, it wouldn't be a man with a briefcase.
Right, right.
And I can see where she was probably moving things with the seizure. But
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if this was like an ancestor or guardian. What was the briefcase about? Was it a doctor? And like old time, a doctor?
Yeah,
That's like really interesting.
right. So
That's a whole nother podcast.
I know, I know, because
Whoa.
it was like a fedora type hat or a top hat is what they, not a top hat, but
Ooh,
a hat.
18. I'm seeing 1800s.
That's what I was seeing too.
I'm
Hmm.
seeing 1800s, yeah. And that could have been a physician of the time who
It
could have
could
been
have
an
been.
ancestor.
Hmm.
And that's why he appears. Oh, this is good.
Yeah, but
We're
then
both getting the same hits.
right.
Like, oh.
And this just occurred to me because I was like, oh my gosh, that research that really did remind me of what she would experience or what the family was experiencing. Like I said, it was chaos when things would happen, of course, but they were more concerned about her health than why is everything getting moved around in our house,
Oh
kind
my
of thing.
gosh,
Yeah.
yes.
Uh-huh.
Well, but you can also imagine the amped up energy of everybody in the house,
Right.
you know?
Hmm.
And if you have, like you said, adults can do this too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could be almost anybody making it happen. And it's not only when things get moved around the house. I mean, I guess my perspective's different because I've lived in multiple haunted houses,
Hmm.
not on purpose. It just seems to work out that way. That when things get moved, you don't freak out as much as maybe somebody who's new to it. I don't know. Maybe I'm jaded, but I'm
Oh,
like, okay, really?
but
Quit moving my phone.
you're not making excuses for it.
Well, no,
Whereas
because
other
yeah,
people have something happen and
well,
then they
that's
just
true. You're right.
logically say, oh, well,
Yeah,
that was just the wind, or that was the
yeah.
cat, or that was the dog, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
You're right. I was looking at it from my perspective, but totally it's not my perspective in this situation. It's someone who is not open, doesn't
Right.
realize,
Hmm.
uneducated, whatever you want to call it. And that's usually what it is with a PK manifestation or a poltergeist.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not to segue into squirrel into something else, but we've heard of, you and I have heard of things called the crawler.
Oh, gosh. Yes.
I know, I know. We saw one at work. Oh, we didn't see. Lady at work was saw one, and I'm like, "You saw a crawler? Keep it to yourself. Don't share the crawler. I don't want to see it." But she saw something that and a crawler, I think, is a type of PK manifestation. I could
Oh,
be wrong. Got no documented proof, but a crawler is something that is like crawls along the floor. It's not very big. I mean, not very tall, but it just kind of moves like a crab or
mm,
whatever, and up and down, and go up the ceiling, go up the walls, whatever. But it's not a living person,
right. It was never a human form. It was never a
right?
spirit in human
Yeah, and
form.
like
Hmm.
and like some places, like a prison, have entities like a crawler. And I don't work in a prison, so that's not what happened there. But, or places where there was a lot of torture or sadness or emotional upheaval, which goes with what you were saying, Kim, about the PK thing
Hmm.
and the poltergeist. But, I mean, I happen to work in a place that does have different kinds of energy that's not always entertaining. But, so I can see where a crawler might manifest. But that's got to be the same sort of scenario with someone manifesting a PK or uh, manifestation could also kind of create a crawler.
I think so. I mean, look at all the haunted TB homes, the former TB homes, or the tuberculosis centers,
Oh,
and the
yes,
old
yes,
mental
yes. Where people would,
institutions.
yes.
Hmm.
And you didn't have to be mentally insane to go to a mental institution back in the, late 1800s, early 1900s. Husband just had to say you did something stupid. And
Yes.
wife is now insane. Let's put her in the institution. and like you said, the tuberculosis. Oh, there's so many haunted tuberculosis clinics.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Waverly, I think, is the most known one,
Right, but think of
if
all
I
the
may say that.
energy, all of the energy
Oh
that was in
yeah,
their building and such. I'm
yes,
sure there were many
yes,
PKs and or poltergeists and anything in there because
yeah.
of
And they used to have the old workhouses where, in the Depression, where people were poor and they had nowhere to go, they would go to these workhouses.
mm-hmm,
Where they do the farm and everybody had a task and it was the work. And there was, if you left there, you always ended up coming back because there was no jobs.
right.
So usually if you ended up at the workhouse or the work farm, that's where you died,
Yeah.
so these manifestations have been going on forever,
Forever.
I would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, forever.
It's just how do you get rid of one? I mean, let's say Susie Q was here and she created this PK manifestation. She and the family moved out west to create another one because she's left untreated, and now you got one here. How do you get rid of that?
Well, like I said, if they get the counseling they need and they start coming to terms with being a psychic or a medium with their abilities and learn how to meditate and stay mindful of themselves and such, the poltergeists and PK issues slowly die down. They can actually go away if the person learns to not only control the emotions that they're dealing with and coping with in their regular life and learning how to deal with their psychic life or their empath life or whatever life they have going on, their mediumship or whatever the case is, that
Okay,
the
so
the PKs can dissolve.
this is where my mind's going. Blown. Remember when we were little and everything happened that one night with the chains on your curtains were laying beside you, Julie's curlers got messed with, and my
Mm-hmm.
light came on.
Right.
I wonder if that was a PK. I wonder if that was a PK thing. Because we were all like, I mean, you and Julie are a year apart. I'm 2 years younger than you. So the teen years were, we were all back to back to back. I'm wondering if that was a PK moment or was it just the mischievous ghosts that we had, because usually Mr. and Mrs. Tate didn't do much upstairs. They were helpful. They made themselves seen. They didn't do much. So I'm wondering now on this episode, like, I wonder if that was a PK thing from one of us girls.
Well, that was something that ran through across my mind as well because there were odd things that would happen like this to each of us individually or as like we said overnight that one night that I thought that this was also the same thing, that it might have been a PK experience happening with
Yeah,
one of
and
us or
it's
whatever because we are three
yeah,
prepubescent teenage girls, whatever you want to call it, at the
in
same
the same
time
house
in the same
that are
house with psychic
psychic.
abilities and everything
Yeah,
building and growing. And yeah, that ran through my mind as well that
you know
you know
that, and maybe on the night, Halloween night, when all the decorations flew off the wall.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh
That
gosh,
sounds
yeah.
PK-ish.
Yeah, right.
But I don't I don't think we created an entity off that. That's makes you want to go But yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of like, oh, that might have been because we had the bad entity in the basement. We know that. We all felt that.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
We all felt that. But what happened that one night was different than what Mr. or Mrs. Tate would interact with us. And
Yes.
the basement entity would never be upstairs on the second floor.
Right. Right.
My mind is blown. I'm like, wait a minute. I think we had this. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
In a bad way, I guess. I don't
Well,
know.
well
But
not
that just shows how.
not
Well,
necessarily
yeah,
in a
because
bad way.
no, because it wasn't extreme, which they can be extreme. But that just
Yes.
shows how easily that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as anything's getting explained away, it was just, one more thing explained away, which may not have helped the next situation. I don't know. But yeah, that makes sense.
Right. And, it made me think of like when I was working at that school in the cafeteria and that I told the story about how a knife had
Right.
moved when my back was turned. Well,
Yes.
Was it
Yeah.
me doing telekinesis trying to,
Did you do
did
it?
I do that? Because at that point in time, I
Right.
was definitely not out of the closet on anything.
Girl, you're still not out of that closet, but that's okay.
Yeah. But it makes me wonder because that is part of the telekinesis or the psychokinesis part
Yes.
of it is something moving. Granted, it was a knife and it moved, probably 6 inches and up onto top of a crate thing, but I guess that could be
Well,
considered dangerous if it would have fallen and get.
well, I mean, let's be honest. We've heard of PK manifestations on some of the shows we've watched where knives have been thrown,
Right,
or
exactly.
a vase has been thrown across the room and shattered.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends on how volatile the emotional state is of the person who is doing it. And it's not on purpose, obviously. No one wakes up and goes, oh, I'm going to create a PK manifestation and let's just wreak havoc on society.
Right.
But let's face it, if your vibration is low,
Mm-hmm.
you're not in a good place.
Right.
So you're more than likely have some depression. And if you are depressed and you're psychic and you're in a low spot, you are just adding so much things to this recipe to create a PK manifestation.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Yeah, so that's, yeah, wow. I think we've had some good stuff, Kim. That's pretty good. And you weren't sure about this episode.
I just let it fly.
Little Miss, I don't think we're going to say what this next episode's about because I don't agree yet. Which I don't blame you. I do throw a lot of things at Kim that she's not really ready for, but I'm on the fly and I'm going with what Spirit's telling me, and this is what we're doing. And Kim does a wonderful job of rolling with it. So thank you, Kim, for rolling with it.
Oh, you're welcome. I learned a lot too, though. And it explained things. And I know I say that almost every episode, but it could explain things that I've experienced in my past, that I think about that you don't even think about at the time. Oh, that's what this is because you don't know.
Well, I had aha moments all throughout this episode, which I thought was great. Oh, there's a cardinal right outside my window.
Ah.
Hello, hey, Mom. No, she made it very clear in my psychic reading she is not a cardinal. She's a yellow and black bird.
Okay.
That would be a golden finch for all
Golden
of you that
Finch.
don't know that.
That's right.
Golden finch, yes. Hopefully this is an aha moment for a lot of you, and hopefully it was enjoyable. You can't really have a lot of fun with this topic, because it's a serious topic,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very real topic. And I'm glad listener reached out to us and wanted to bring it up because it was like it snowballed.
It did.
Kim and I were like going, well, I know I had a situation where this is what I think happened. And Kim's like, well, I know I've had this happen. And we're like, well, but is that really, how's that tie into psychic abilities? And all of a sudden it was like, whoa, this is psychic stuff. We got PK manifestations, we have poltergeists, we got
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff is growing. And it's like, well, we got this. This is an episode we didn't see. So thank you, listener. You know who you are.
Yes, thank you.
For reaching out to us. Yes. Oh, I had another listener reach out to us that she was really struggling with the astrology and the numerology episodes. And for that, we are sorry. We tried to do our best to make that easy to follow. You want to get the app for numerology. Blows your mind. You'll be wonderful.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Segue from that. So, Kim, is there anything else you want to add to this episode?
No, I don't think so. I hope that it was entertaining and informative for everybody. I just found it fascinating. Of course, there's not a whole lot out there unless you want to read the old studies and information from the late 1800s to early 1900s
Well,
and even into the 80s, but there was a lot of information out there as far as people.
if you want to watch Dead Files from the beginning, like we've brought it up before, Dead Files, you have a New York City former homicide. Was it a homicide?
Retired homicide detective.
Retired homicide detective.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing an investigation where he's interviewing people. And then he doesn't share with Amy and then later our other psychic what his findings are. So he's researching, he's investigating, he's reaching out to people and former police officers, whatnot, to help him out with his case. And Amy is going in and doing the psychic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she encounters a lot of unusual things in her things. And of course, keep in mind, there is some, we want to get ratings kind of stuff. But she does come across several PK manifestations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does.
Yeah, and you could tell that they are very authentic. And so I definitely recommend that if you're interested in the PK or the poltergeist activity, I would kind of start watching the Dead Files just to follow along on that. And Cindy Kaza is the one who took over for Amy.
Cindy, that's right.
Towards
Cindy, yeah.
Yeah, towards the end. But Amy did see a lot more PK manifestation, and her abilities are different from Cindy's. Just like, you know, we have 3 psychics in the family, and all 3 of us do something different. Kim does something different than I do. Julie does something different than I do. We don't do the same stuff all the time.
Right.
So, like, when Kim and I get the same hits together, it's really exciting because that doesn't happen all the time. Because we do different stuff.
We do.
Yeah, so Amy is really good at picking up on psychic mediums because it's a different vibe. You know, if you're a medium, you're putting up a different energy level. You're attracting things to you that maybe you don't realize and stuff. So that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kindred Spirits is good on more of that they do some delving into the PK, don't you think, Kim?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good one to watch as well if you've got that. I think that's more of a Discovery Plus thing. I'm not getting a plug from them. They're not paying us anything. I'm just telling you that's where I watch it. Because I don't pay for cable, and
Yeah.
I like to stream. So that's got nothing to do with anything with the podcast. So Kim, what is our next topic going to be?
Okay. So our next topic is that we are going to be interviewing our sister Julie.
Yes, psychic medium extraordinaire. No, just kidding. Psychic medium Julie is going to be joining us on our next episode. And hopefully the episode after that is Krista.
Yeah.
Mage Apothecary. And that would be pretty cool. And then after that, we're going into our Angel series, aren't we?
Yes. And we may have a sidetrack in there somewhere, maybe, because
we may throw my niece in there under the bus.
Yes. She has agreed to join us as well. So
yes, we're just trying to work around her schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be great if we can work it out before we go into the Angel series. But the Angels is going to be a series because it's Archangels. Hello, it's going to take some time. Yeah. And I promise it won't be like numerology and astrology.
Oh gosh, yeah. Don't leave it to me. It will. No, I can't go all geeky on angels. So
well, we'll keep Left Brain on track, so don't worry.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. This was a really interesting episode for Kim and I to do. We really got so much out of it, didn't we, Kim?
Oh, I did. Yeah, we did. Definitely.
Yeah. And, of course, any episode we're learning on, which we learn on all of them, but I think I learned a lot more on this one. I had a couple more aha moments that I usually don't have. So I'm really glad. Thank you, listener. I won't say your name, for recommending this because it really took us down a totally different avenue.
I agree.
All right. Thank you, listeners. Bye.
Bye. May your light shine bright. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast, Psychic Bent. If you enjoyed Psychic Bent, please like, follow, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to Psychic Bent. We can be reached on Facebook at Psychic Bent Podcast. Our email address is psychicbent1@gmail.com. May your light shine bright.